Welcome to an episode of InRange. Russell, Sinistral Rifleman, you have what, the Ruger Ready Dot?
Yes, it is a $99 red fiber optic dot that is RMSC pattern. So if you have a pistol that's milled for the RMSC optic pattern, it'll bolt right onto it. And the interesting thing about this is that it is so cheap, but it also has no windage or elevation adjustments whatsoever.
So you put it on, and whatever the mechanical zero is what it is.
That's it. And it was cheap enough, and the claims about it are interesting enough that figured might as well just buy one and see if it works.
So it's fiber optic, meaning that in zero light conditions it won't work. Is that a correct statement?
I don't believe it has tritium in it, but maybe we can verify.
Yeah, I doubt it for that kind of price. Yeah, it is completely collecting only ambient light, but yeah, I mean, if you have any light environment to pull from, it seems like it'll work. But
yeah, I did have it like indoors with like the lights off, and there was still something visible. The dot is 15 MOA.
It's giant,
which leads me to believe that's why you don't need to zero it, because just anything inside that 15 MOA circle this low to the bore is probably close enough for most self-defense shooting distances.
literally the dots within the mechanical error tolerances.
Right.
So what we should do here is we got a nice clean black target here, painted just freshly. Start at 10 yards and see where it shoots?
Sure.
I'm going to point to center of aim and then move back, or what?
Yeah. And I will note that Ruger says it's ideal to use on their Max 9 pistol.
Okay.
We're using it on the 365 XL with a macro frame that SIG previously provided to us.
I can't see how it would make a difference.
It's so low to the bore. I mean, you can see it's like the glass is just barely hovering above the slide that I don't think one RMSC milling pattern versus another is going to be substantially off.
It is very low bore, there's no doubt about that. And it looks kind of cool. So anyway, let's do some shooting, and then maybe I can get some pictures through it later, because one thing I did notice is that if you're pointed towards a bright light source, you get all these little star patterns and stuff, which is a little weird. Not that that matters either. I mean, this thing is meant to be a cheap, self-defense oriented, no complication dot.
Right.
All right, let's go to 10 yards, and let's see what happens. So, Fagan, we're at 10 yards. You want to load up and just shoot to center of mass on that target?
Yeah, let's see what happens.
All right, shoot high right, 1 o'clock. High right, 1 o'clock.
And I'm aiming directly between the two bolts.
So you're aiming right in the middle there. So it's shooting to the right.
Yeah. Well, maybe like me jerking the trigger a little bit. But it does seem a little bit off to the right.
Okay, certainly sufficient for this distance with no zeroing. I mean, that still would have done the job, right?
Right.
All right, so what should we do? Move back?
Why don't you shoot it? We'll repaint it and have you shoot it.
Yep. I'm going to give this a whirl. I'm going to aim directly between the two bolts on the target. Okay, so it's slightly to the right. I'm aiming directly at the center bolts. I just kept shooting in the same spot, threw a couple high, a couple low, probably the size of the dot, but it's definitely hitting slightly to the right. However, at this distance, for what this is intended to do, that was no problem whatsoever, and that would still be more than sufficient, even for a headshot. So let's move back to 20 yards and see what happens. We're now at 20 yards. I'm going to let you shoot a couple rounds, but then I'm going to zoom in, because we have a little white splotch there from the hits previously for you to aim at. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, go for it. This is my shot at 20 yards. I'm going to aim at that splotch that's there. Oddly, it actually went straight to center of mass at this point. It didn't even seem to be deflecting to the right. I have a really good group dead center of that target with no problems whatsoever. So at 20 yards, no zeroing, this thing is still doing as promised, and frankly, this is more than sufficient for what it's designed to do. I'm gonna get a picture of that target so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in on the target in a minute, but what are we gonna do?
We got 2 mags of 5 rounds. We're just gonna see how many headshots we can get.
Headshots at 20 yards, right?
Yep.
All right, go for it.
One kind of skimmed off the right, but it was still a hit. But the rest of them are in there.
Yep, you're doing it. All right, let me give it a whirl. Headshots at 20 yards with this unzeroable Ruger Ready Dot. "20 yards, all 5 hits in the head target with absolutely no way to zero it. I'm honestly very impressed, and I think this product is working absolutely better than I expected. What else could you ask for? What?
I'm surprised that worked as well as it did.
Okay, so this is a sample 1 of 1, right? Maybe a different gun would be different, or maybe it wouldn't work as well on a different gun, or maybe 1 to 1, it's not the same. But you put this thing on there, and we had to do nothing. We're just fine.
Right. No zeroing, nothing. Like the only thing I did is when I did screw it down, I made sure that, you know, it was relatively centered, because you can slew it off to one side or another. If you tighten the screws down unevenly, you could affect it.
Okay, so you were a little cautious upon mounting it.
Right.
However, we came out here, you immediately started getting center of mass hits at 10, moved back to 20. It actually shot better for me at 20. It seemed like it hitting to the right went away, and I was center of mass. And then we went for headshots, and my headshots were all like right in the head.
Yeah. And for me, I can't say that some of those edge hits to the right weren't me just jerking the trigger, being a left-handed shooter.
Okay, so for this thing being under $100, designed for what it's intended to be designed for, which is not some precision optic, this is meant to be the simplest of simple red dots for a self-defense pistol. With our sample of 1, your conclusion?
It seems to work. Now, a couple things we can't test out here is varying lighting conditions.
No.
Like being in a dark place shooting into a bright place, or being in a bright place shooting into a dark place. That is potentially an issue with fiber optic illuminated optics, regardless of what you're using. Back to the Trijicon reflex of 30 years ago.
Sure.
That's always been an issue with fiber optic optics. So there's that. We're not testing durability.
No.
Like, we're not running a bajillion rounds through this thing and seeing if it breaks. We're not, dropping it from 6 feet, which I have a feeling this, rounded plastic housing here, if we did really drop it, it's probably going to crack. But for most people, for what this is going to be mounted to, like some sort of compact 9mm carry gun, I don't think it's going to get abused all that much.
No, and realistically, as we know, statistically speaking, self-defense shootings tend to be 10 yards or less. Actually, it's the rule of 3 a lot of times. 3 yards, 3 seconds, 3 shots.
Right.
There's always anomalies. But so then we took it out to the anomaly, which was headshots at 20 yards, and still we're fine.
Right.
So in that regard, this thing, for the general envelope and window of a self-defense carry pistol, at least in this example, it's absolutely fine.
And I hate to say it, but a lot of people are really bad at zeroing their pistol red dots. We've talked about that on the channel before too, that like people will zero the dot to their poor trigger pull. And the further back they are, the more off that gets. So maybe Ruger is not wrong in that the dot for the masses has no adjustability on a handgun.
So you're saying simpler might be better?
Possibly.
Kind of going back to the old military doctrine of, here are your iron sights, use them.
Right. And that huge 15 MOA red dot's pretty fast too.
Yeah, it comes up real quick. So it'd be fun to actually put this sometime on the clock.
Yes, in the right circumstances. A lot of the shooting challenges we have at matches are well beyond what self-defense shooting requirements are. But I think a lot of the steel challenge, pistol matches where it is typically 20 yards or less, probably would be serviceable at.
Yep, that's an interesting thing, maybe a video for another day. But as it stands right now, I have to say, thumbs up for the Ruger Ready Dot.
Seems to be a great value for what it is.
And I would have never expected that. When I saw them release this, I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And here we are. And we're like, huh, well, it works great. So did you buy this?
Yes, I did. I did purchase this through distribution at dealer price. But it is the support from patrons that allow us to do stuff like that.
Yeah, so Ruger didn't send this to us. Yeah, patreon.com/InRangeTV. If you want to support the channel, be able to allow us to do things like this, which are completely honest, unbiased reviews, please consider supporting us. And if you can't, we just understand. Subscribe to the channel and share with your friends, because that helps us break out of the YouTube algorithm. And Ruger, pretty cool.